Hello, and welcome to Rethinking Our History, where we seek to shed a light on events that have been forgotten and covered up, and to make us all question how much do we really know about our history? I'm Felicia.
And I'm Ian, and we are here to reveal all the sordid details of history that have been swept under the rug. Get ready to get angry, be curious, and maybe have a laugh or two as we rethink our history.
Hello, friends.
Hey guys.
Thanks for joining us for another lesson, number 81. We are back this week with part 2 of our look at the Donner Party and the events that made them a household name.
Yeah.
Do you remember, when you first heard of the Donner Party? Do you remember, how old you were? Because I cannot for the life of me remember the first time I heard the name The Donner Party. It's just kind of always been there in the ethos. I feel like.
I want to say the first time I heard about it, it was because of the Swedish plane that went down.
In the Andes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think I have that on my list to be covered.
I want to say they mentioned it in the movie.
Probably. I feel like they may have talked about this. One of my teachers may have taught us about this, actually, may have been where I learned it from. But anyways, so when we last left you, Stanton had made his way back to the party as they were heading into the Sierra Nevada mountain range. He had returned with food, mules, guides, and word.
Frood.
I was putting food and mules together.
Dr. Frood.
Fuels. Food, mules, guides, and word of fellow travelers who had been on their own.
Tell me about your mother.
The party felt they had been through the worst of it, but in reality, the worst was yet to come. Dr. Tote.
Dr. Tote.
I've been doing so good. I don't know if you noticed the last 2 weeks with the way I've been able to get through my episodes without messing up too much. And this week, it's like, we're back. By October, I think I'm frustrated by that little fucker on the VR.
Yeah, you are.
By October 20th, the party had reached Sutter's Fort and had come to a decision. Would they push on or rest their cattle? They had heard word that these mountains would be worse than the Wasatch Range, but they had also been told it would not be snowed in until the middle of November. Then a tragic event took place that seemed to make the choice for them. William Foster was loading his gun when it went off, striking and killing William Foster.
This so he shot himself?
No, it was a different William Foster.
Okay.
I think. Pretty sure.
William Foster 1 shot William Foster 2.
Listen, if you guys haven't seen The Neighborhood, that's what I need to do after this to get that little shit off my mind. Go watch The Neighborhood, because I don't know if you've heard me cackle in the last few nights. You don't seem to like it very much, but I think it's hilarious.
I like it.
If y'all haven't watched it, go watch The Neighborhood. It's got Schmidt from New Girl and Cedric the Entertainer.
I like all of Cedric's stuff.
He is fucking hilarious. This seemed to prompt the families to start making their way over the mountains. First, the Breens left, then the Kessbergs, the Reeds, Graves, and Murphys left with Stanton, and the Donners were the last to head out. A few miles into this new leg of their journey, one of the axles broke on a wagon. Jacob and George went out into the woods to get materials for a new one, leading to George cutting his hand open while using a chisel. At the time, it seemed like a minor superficial wound.
Dysentery.
He wishes. It began to snow as the Breens made their way up the tall, nearly vertical slope. It was 1,000 feet or 300 meters up to Truckee Lake, which has been renamed Donner Lake, but we're just going to keep calling it Truckee Lake for the remainder of this. And 3 miles from the pass summit, the Summit Pass. They set up camp near a cabin that had been built 2 years before by another party. The Eddies and the Kessbergs joined up with the Breens and attempted to make it over the pass. However, in their way, they found 5 to 10 feet or 1.5 to 3 meter snow drifts that covered the trail.
Damn.
They returned to Truckee Lake, and within a day, all but the Donners had joined them. The Donners were 5 miles or 8 kilometers below them. 60 people would end up in 3 cabins and 1 lean-to.
Jeez.
I'm trying to do math on that. That's like 15 people per cabin. The Breens had one, the Eddies and Murphy shared one, and the Reeds and Graves shared the third. Kessberg built the lean-to for his family. There were no windows or doors, just a large hole to go through, and they used canvas or oxhide to patch the roofs. Of those camped at the lake, 19 were men over 18, 12 were women, 29 were children, including 6 who were under the age of 5. Down at the Donner camp, they had built tents to house the 21 people that were in their group. On the night of November 4th, an 8-day snowstorm began.
Jeez.
There was already 5 to 10 feet of snow on the pass.
Right.
At this point, the group was already about out of food. The oxen began to die off, but there was not much left to them. The lake was not yet frozen, but the group was unfamiliar with how to fish for lake trout. You should throw a goddamn line in the water and you hope something bites it. What? I mean, come on now. One man was able to kill a bear, but they had no luck after that, especially due to the weather. Though they had not been able to make the trip when they first got there, small groups of people kept attempting to cross the pass, hoping one day someone would be able to make it through to the other side. But each time they would return to the camp defeated. Another week-long storm hit, which covered the area with so much snow, the last of the cattle and horses died and were then covered with the snow and lost to the group. We know much of this from survivor accounts and Patrick Breen, who began to keep a diary on November 20th. At first, he was keeping track of the storms and how much snow had fallen, but before long, he began to add religious references to his entries. Things turned bleak quick at Truckee Camp with cramped, dirty cabins. There was so much snow, people were not able to go outside for days at a time. Imagine the smell of 4 to 10 people in one room with no bathroom.
Oh, no.
Soon their food consisted of oxide that was boiled to make a glue-like paste, and bones of the animals were boiled over and over until they crumbled to dust. Sometimes the bones would be charred over a fire so they would get soft enough to eat. I mean, listen, I've eaten the bone marrow. Never tried a bone. A party set out at some point with makeshift snowshoes to again attempt the pass, leaving around 25 people at the camp, with at least 17 of those being children. Those kids were split up with Mrs. Graves, caring for 8, and Lavina Murphy and Eleanor Eddy took care of the other 9. Most of the time, people spent the day in their beds, being too weak to do much else. Occasionally, someone would make the hike down to visit with the Donners. Jacob Donner passed, as did 3 of the hired men, Joseph Reinhardt, while on his deathbed. As did 3 of the hired men. Joseph Reinhardt, while on his deathbed, confessed to killing Wolfhanger.
Oh, no.
A lot of that goes around. That seemingly small and insignificant cut George had received had become infected, leaving only 4 men to work in the Donner camp. By January, Margaret Reed and her children were down to thinking about their oxen roof for food. Margaret, Virginia, Mitt Elliott, and Eliza Williams tried to walk out, hoping to get food, instead of sitting and watching the children starve, but they only made it 4 days before they turned around and headed back to camp. Upon returning to camp, they moved in with the Breens so they could use their roof for food, and Eliza went to live with another family. However, their food source would not last long, as the Graves came by to collect on a debt and took all of their ox hide, the only thing they had to eat.
Damn.
Because, assholes. People began to die off at Truckee Lake. Augustus Spitzer and driver Bayless Williams were the first to die. Franklin Graves made 14 pairs of snowshoes from oxbows and hide. On the 16th of December, a party of 17 that included men, women, and children set out on foot to again attempt to cross the mountain pass. They packed very little, 6 days worth of whatever rations they had, a rifle, a blanket for each person, a hatchet, and some pistols. This group, that was named the Forlorn Hope by historian Charles McGlashan, were hoping to make their way to Bear River. Nope, Bear Valley. 3 people were without snowshoes. Charles Berger and 10-year-old William Murphy turned back early in the trip, while 12-year-old Lemuel Murphy had a pair of snowshoes made for him out of one of the paddle sacks they were using. The snowshoes were awkward to use, but proved to be helpful on the climb. None of those on this hike were well fed, nor were they used to hiking and climbing in 12 feet or 3.7 meters of snow.
Wow.
12 feet.
Yeah.
That's over twice as tall as we are. Do you imagine that much snow? I feel like that's the kind of
Crazy.
snow that my mom talked about when she said they used to have to go out the second story window to tunnel down to the door when
Sure.
she grew up in Michigan back in the 60s.
Yeah.
By the third day, most of the group were snowblind, which essentially means they had gotten sunburns in their eyeballs.
They should have took the little native mask thing where you cut like slits in the leather. Should have done
Yeah.
that.
Or wood. I've
Yeah.
seen them make them out of wood too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they were eating their leather, sir.
This is true.
On December 21st, the group set out again. Staton had fallen behind a bit and told the group to go ahead and he would catch up, but sadly his body would be found in the same area the next year. Soon the group became lost and confused. After 2 more days, desperation set in, and Patrick Dolan suggested that someone should volunteer to die to feed the rest of them.
Mm.
Some people suggested a duel, while some sources claimed they thought about making a lottery. Eddie suggested they just keep on moving and just wait for someone to die, but a blizzard did force them to stop. Antonio was the first to die, with Franklin Graves following soon after. As the blizzard grew worse, Dolan became erratic, probably from hypothermia. He began ranting, stripped all of his clothes off, and ran into the woods. He returned a short time later and died within a few hours. At the end of their rope, it wasn't long before the rest of the group began taking strips of flesh off of Dolan to eat.
Mm.
Sarah tried to feed some to Lemuel, but he died a short time later. And it's not funny, but it's kind of funny that Dolan was like, hey, somebody should die so the rest of us could eat. And then he died and they ate him.
Right.
You suggested it, man. What do you want us to do?
The smeller's the feller.
I'm telling you. Eddie, Salvador, and Luis refused. Wait, did I say Sarah tried to feed some to Lemuel, but he died a short time later?
Yeah.
Okay. Eddie, Salvador, and Luis refused to eat any of the human flesh, but the rest of them were at the point of no return. The next morning, they stripped what meat they could from Antonio, Dolan, Graves, and Murphy and dried them for their journey ahead. They took great care to make sure no one would be eating their own relatives. Which, appreciate it. I don't want to eat my mom, but I'll eat your mom. They ran.
Yeah, it's a little messed up.
Oh, God, my dark humor. Y'all, I have PTSD. Leave me alone. You do what you gotta do, but I mean, I get it. I wouldn't necessarily like want to eat your patty, but if it was somebody else, like I guess
Right.
they rested for 3 days before setting off again to look for the trail. Eddie would give in to his hunger and eat some of the meat, but it soon ran out too. They began to take their snowshoes apart, and some began to talk about killing Salvador and Luis to eat. Thankfully, Eddie warned the two men, and they were able to escape the camp. During the night, Jenny Fosdick died, leaving only 7 people out of the original 17 that had started.
Jeez.
Eddie and Mary Graves went out to hunt, but when they got back with a deer they found, Fosdick had already been cut up. Whoops. 25 days.
Bye.
What the fuck was that?
25 days.
25
Too long
days.
to go.
Oh god. Y'all give me I also have a lot of anxiety. I'm starting school technically today when this comes out. So
Yeah.
y'all keep your fingers crossed. Send me some good vibes.
She needs it.
25 days after leaving the lake, the group came across Salvador and Luis, who had not eaten for 9 days and were almost dead. William Foster shot the two men, and they were cut apart and dried to be eaten later.
Oh God.
I've watched Alone way too much because I'm literally thinking about them like making jerky out of these people, like the dude on Alone. The people on Alone make jerky out of their food,
Yeah.
smoke their shit.
The guy that was like hoarding fish.
Oh my god, that poor guy.
He's like, I'm not gonna eat. He was like starving and wouldn't eat.
Yeah, he
So
didn't want to eat it because he was afraid he'd run out, and he lost so much weight they made him medically tap.
Yeah.
I'll start eating it, I promise. They're like, dude, you're too far gone.
Yep.
Um,
Shoot. Yeah.
mhm. Though no one kept these
Eat you.
though no one kept these murders a secret, no one really cared as they were native men, and people saw them as little more than cattle anyways.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Just a few days later, the group made their way into a native village. They looked so terrible that the villagers ran from them at first.
I would imagine so. About to say like, so
They've been literally been out for like a month.
if they're all starving, there's probably not much meat on them.
No, you know how gaunt you look, your bones all sticking out.
Yeah.
You're overgrown, like your hair's all grown out. You ain't brushed your shit. You ain't washed your shit. You're probably covered in blood from like cutting up people. Although if it's frozen, maybe not. Yeah. They looked so bad the villagers ran from them, but they came back, gave the men the food they had to eat, and a few days later, Eddie continued onto a ranch in a small farming community near the Sacramento Valley. A small rescue party was put together, and on January 17th, they found the 6 other survivors. Their journey from the lake took them 33 days.
Oof.
I can't imagine trying to get through that snow. A month of going through the snow.
With nothing to eat.
Nothing to eat, but like your fellow man. Reed. Do you remember James Reed? They kicked James Reed out because he killed a man for punching his wife.
Think so.
Yeah. We didn't really like James Reed. We kind of do like James Reed, though. Reed, who had been kicked out of the group months before, had made his way out of the Sierra Nevadas back in October and was recuperating at Sutter's Fort. He became more and more concerned as each day passed and his friends and family had not yet arrived. He went to Colonel John C. Fremont and begged him to get a group of men together to go to the pass and help the others. To make it worth the colonel's time, he promised to join him in fighting the Mexican-American War.
Hmm.
Reed was joined by McCutcheon and sorry, I just heard Patty in the background going, "Woo, woo!" Like, is she on a slide? She doing? Reed was joined by McCutcheon and some members of the Harlan Young Party, which, if you remember from last week, was the last party Hastings had escorted through the pass. The pass. They had arrived at Sutter's Fort on October 8th and were the last group to come out of the Sierra Nevadas. Around a dozen men and 30 horses set out carrying food and expected to find the group camping on the western side of the mountain along Bear River. However, when they arrived, they only found a couple who had been separated from their own group and were close to starving to death. Two of the guides left at this point with some of the horses, but the rest of them pressed on to Yuba Bottoms, making the last mile on foot. Oh my God. Why did you do that? He yawned. Looking up from their vantage point, they could see Immigrant Gap, only 12 miles or 19 kilometers ahead, completely blocked by snow.
Hmm.
What they couldn't see was right on the other side of that snow, the Breens were making one more attempt to get through the pass before they gave up and turned back to camp.
Damn. So close.
So close. In other parts of the state, the military was engaged with the Mexican-American War, as were most of the able-bodied men in the state. This area was riddled with roadblocks, communication lines were compromised, and supplies were in short supply. Only 3 men volunteered to go after the Donner Party, and Reed found himself trapped in San Jose due to local uprisings. He spent that time gathering support from other pioneers and acquaintances. Reed's efforts spurred the people of San Jose to petition the U.S. Navy to help the people at Truckee Lake. Local newspapers reported the cannibalism, which garnered more sympathy for the people still trapped on the mountain. Residents of the Yerba Buena raised $1,300 or 44,900 US dollars in 2025 in organized efforts to build camps for rescue parties. On February 4th, keep in mind these people got trapped up there November 4th.
Wow.
4 months later, a party that included William Eddy set out from Sacramento Valley. They would be delayed several times by rain and rising rivers. Eddy stayed at Bear Valley while the rest of them kept hiking up the mountain to the pass. Along the way, the rescue party hid their food so they would not have to carry it all and they would have supplies on the way back. 3 of the rescue party turned back, but 7 of them forged ahead. On February 18th, the rescue party made their way through Fremont Pass, now known as Donner Pass. As they got closer to the area where Eddy said the cabins were, they started shouting for survivors. Mrs. Murphy stepped out of a hole in the snow, stared at them a moment before she asked, quote, "Are you men from California or do you come from heaven?" End quote. I mean, imagine you've been trapped up there for 4.5 months and you haven't seen another living soul. The rescue party began to give the survivors small portions of food, trying to make sure not to overwhelm their bodies after weeks of limited food. All the cabins were buried in snow with soaking oxhide roofs that were rotting, and an overwhelming smell filled the spaces. 13 people were dead and buried in shallow snow graves around the cabins. Some of the survivors were showing symptoms of mental breaks. 3 of the rescue party made the trip down to the Donner camp, returning with 4 malnourished children and 4 adults. Leanna Donner struggled to make the trip up to the lake later, writing, quote, "Such pain and misery as I endured that day is beyond description," end quote. George Donner, who had gotten what seemed to be an innocent cut, was now dealing with an arm full of gangrene and was unable to move.
Oh, no.
23 people left with this first rescue party, leaving 21 in the cabins at the lake and 12 at Adler Creek. The rescuers had not told the survivors what happened to the snowshoe party. They simply told them that they had not returned with the rescue party because they were dealing with frostbite.
Hmm.
And we're like, y'all don't need to know over half of that rescue party died.
Right.
Patty and Tommy Reed soon became too weak to walk across the snowdrifts, and no one was strong enough to carry them. Margaret had to choose between going with her two older children to Bear Valley or going back with the two smaller ones to Truckee Lake. She forced rescuer Aquila Glover. She forced rescuer Aquila Grover to swear on his honor as a Mason that he would come back for her children.
Mm.
Patty told her mother as they parted, quote, "Well, mother, if you never see me again, do the best you can," end quote. Sad.
It's sad.
When they returned to the lake with the two children, the Breens at first refused to let the children into their cabin. But once Grover left more food, they took the children in, although they were not happy about it. The rescue party had their share of issues on the way back. Their first cache of food had been broken into by wild animals, leaving them without food for 4 days. John Denton fell into a coma and died, followed soon after by Ada Kessberg. Her mother was so distraught she refused to leave her daughter's body. As the rescue party and their charges made their way back over the pass, the rescuers were concerned the children would not survive the journey. Much to their surprise, the kids ate the buckskin fringe from one of the rescuers' pants and the shoelaces from another's boots.
Hmm.
On their way down the other side of the mountain, they ran into the next rescue party, which included James Reed. It is said that when Margaret heard his voice, she sank down into the snow, overwhelmed. Once this first group made their way into Bear Valley, a sad tragedy took place. William Hook, stepson to Jacob Donner, broke into food stores and ate himself to death.
Oh no.
Yeah. I know it's not what he looked like, but it makes me think of you've seen Seven, right?
Mhm.
When gluttony
Yep.
takes hold. That's kind of what it makes me think of. The rest of them would carry on to Sutter's Fort. It is said around the same time the first relief party was being organized. George C. Yount claimed to have a distressing dream. George, who was a California farmer, dreamed of a group of pioneers starving and struggling through the deep snow. So distressed was he at this dream that he had others in the area raise $500 to send out another rescue party. March 1st would see the second rescue party reach Truckee Lake. Reed was reunited with his daughter Patty and his son Tommy, who was in a weak state. The people in the Breen cabin were doing fairly well, but when rescuers got to the Murphy cabin, they found it, quote, past the limits of description and almost of imagination, end quote.
Mm.
Lavina Murphy was caring for 3 children, her own 8-year-old son Simon, and the 2 young children of William Eddy and William Foster. Lavina had deteriorated mentally and was almost completely blind. The children were lethargic and had not been cleaned in several days. Louis Kessberg had moved into their cabin but was barely able to move due to a leg injury. No one else died between the first rescue party and the second, but Patrick Breen does recall Mrs. Murphy visiting him and telling him her and her family were considering eating Mitt Elliott. When Reed and McCutcheon found his body, pieces had been cut away. Things were just as desperate down at the Adler Creek camp. When this relief party reached this camp, they saw Trudeau carrying a human leg. When they called out to him, he threw it in a hole in the snow that held most of Jacob Donner's dismembered body. Now, did you just walk up and this dude's just like got a leg? And then he's like, "Oh, I don't have a leg. What you talking about?"
Alakazam.
Listen,
Abracadabra, B.
y'all, the research for this is disturbing. Okay, I'm trying not to think about it too much. Inside, Elizabeth Donner had not eaten, though her children were living off the organs of their father.
Whew.
Yeah, it's rough. The rescuers found 3 other bodies that had been eaten as well. When they got to the other tent, they found Tamsin Donner to be well, but George was extremely sick as the infection from the cut in his hand had reached his shoulder. 17 people were taken out with the second rescue group, 14 children and 3 adults. Back at Truckee Lake, 5 people remained: Kessberg, Miss Murphy, and Simon, and the Eddie and Foster kids. Tamsin had also decided to stay with George when Reed told her there would be a third rescue party arriving soon. She also decided to keep her daughters Eliza, Georgia, and Frances with her. The way back was harder for the second rescue party than the first. Reed sent 2 men ahead to get the first food cache, hoping that they would run into the third rescue party led by Selim E. Woodworth soon. However, after they scaled the pass, a violent blizzard hit. 5-year-old Isaac Donner froze to death, and Reed almost died. Mary Donner ended up with severe burns on her feet. She had frostbite on her feet, and she fell asleep with her feet close to the fire, and then her feet went into the fire.
Oh no.
And she did not realize that her feet were in the fire because they were so severely frostbitten.
Damn.
After the storm passed, the Breen and Graves family were too malnourished and weak to move any further, so the rescue party was forced to leave them. The place where they were left has become known as the Starved Camp. Margaret Breen attempted to care for the people left in that camp after the rescuers left, but Elizabeth Graves and her son Franklin died before the third rescue party could reach them, and the rest of the group ate them to survive.
Damn.
Unfortunate. Members of the relief party stayed behind to help those at the camps. Charles Stone stayed at the Truckee Lake, while Charles Caddy and Nicholas Clark stayed at Adler Creek. Stone and Caddy planned to leave together and return to California. According to sources, Tamsin Donner offered to pay the 2 men $500 if they would take her 3 girls with them. The men agreed, but only took them up to Truckee Lake and left them with Kessberg and Lavina Murphy. 2 days after they left the camps, they passed Starved Camp but did not stop to help. Days later, Clark and Trudeau agreed to leave for California together, but when they reached Truckee Lake and found the Donner girls, they returned to Adler Creek to tell Tamsin. Williams Foster and Eddie, who had been a part of the snowshoe crew, left out of Bear Creek with a man named John Stark. They came across Reed the next day with children, all of them frostbitten and bleeding but alive. Wanting to get to their own children, the Williams persuaded 4 men to travel to Truckee Lake with them. First, they came across the 11 survivors at Starved Creek, where the rescue party split up, with the Williams and 2 other men heading to the lake. Oh, God, excuse me. The remaining 2 rescuers each grabbed a child and headed back down the mountain. Refusing to leave anyone behind, John Stark packed up all the rest of the provisions and helped what was left of the Breens and Graves get down the mountain. At times, he would take a couple of children down the trail, sit them down, and then go back up for the rest of the kids. And he just,
King of the North.
I said fucking John Stark, eh? He's fucking getting it. They really needed some fucking Starks, okay?
Yeah.
Or maybe just like a fucking dragon to like fly them out of there.
Yep.
Once the
Not the
Williams,
snow.
yeah, just not the ice dragon, okay? Make it worse. Once the Williams finally made it to Truckee Lake, they found their children had already died. Kessberg told Eddie that he had ate his son, and Eddie swore that if he met Kessberg in California, he would kill him. George and one of Jacob's children were still alive at Adler Creek. Tamsin had just arrived at the Mercy cabin to see her daughters, but decided to return back to George, even though she was told no other rescue party would be coming. The third rescue party took the Donner girls, Simon Murphy, Trudeau, and Clark. Luvina was too weak to leave, and Kessberg refused. 2 more rescue parties attempted to make the trip up the mountain to get any more adults who wanted to leave, but both parties turned back before getting to Bear Valley, and no more rescue parties were sent. On April 10th, 1 month after the last rescue party left Truckee Lake, the local magistrate organized a salvage party to find whatever they could of the Donners' belongings. They would be sold with half of the funds going to the Donner children. At Adler Creek, they found the tents empty except for one that had George Donner's body. On the way back to Truckee Lake, they ran across Lewis Kessberg alive. He claimed that Miss Murphy died a week after the third party left. Excuse me. He then claimed that a few weeks later, Tamsin came to his cabin soaking wet and visibly upset. According to him, he wrapped her up in a blanket and told her to rest there for the night and she could start out in the morning, but she ended up dying during the night.
Mm.
The party was suspicious of the story and found some things in his cabin that fueled their suspicion. They found a pot of human meat, George Donner's pistol, jewelry, and $250 in gold. The party threatened to hang Kessberg, who confessed he took $273 from the Donners, but only because Tamsin asked him to hold it for her children.
All right.
Sure she did, Bill. In June of 1847, the Mormon Battalion, under the leadership of General Stephen W. Kearny, buried the remains at the campsites and burned two of the cabins. The fucking Mormon Battalion, by God. Over the years, the few people who have made their way over the past have found bones, artifacts in one of the cabins. In 1891, a cache of money was found buried by the lake. Lansford Hastings received death threats over this disaster, but never faced any consequences. Of the 87 people who attempted this trail, only 48 survived.
Jeez.
The only families who came out whole were the Reed and Breen's family. 3 sets of children were orphaned. William Eddy lost his whole family, and most of the Murphys had died. Out of all the livestock, 3 mules made it to California.
Damn.
Probably because they had been taken by people that were already kicked out of the Karoo.
Right.
That's fucking terrible. A few of the widows were married within months, and like that's not a dig at them. During this time, as a woman, you kind of had to be married to survive.
Sure.
The Reeds settled down in San Jose and adopted 2 of the Donner kids. The Reeds would have financial success during the gold rush. Virginia wrote a letter to her cousin about her experience with oversight from her father. The letter was taken to Illinois in June of 1847 and would be printed in the Illinois Journal on December 16th, 1847.
Wow.
Yeah, that family made it out whole.
Yeah.
The Murphys that were left settled in Marysville and the Breens in San Juan Bautista. The Breens were able to buy a historic house with the wealth of their 16-year-old son, who had got rich during the gold rush, and they ran it as an inn. Because of an article by J. Ross Brownie in Harper's Magazine in 1862, the Breens became the talk of the town. He wrote about his discomfort that his host had eaten human flesh. Many of the survivors were hit with the same reactions when people found out, which is like shitty. Listen, folks, nobody wants to eat another human.
Right.
Okay? But when you're starving to death, literally starving to death, there is a dead body right there.
Yeah.
I'm fucking dead.
Yeah.
They're dead. Eat them. Listen, if we get trapped on a mountain and I die, if you let this go to waste, I'm gonna be pissed. Don't let this fat go to waste. You can keep it alive for a really long fucking time, okay?
Girl, I'll make you like a Luke Skywalker in a
Mary Graves would get married, but her first husband was murdered. To ensure his murderer would see the hanged man's noose, she cooked meals for him. She said, "You ain't gonna die because you eating shitty food. We're gonna make sure you stay alive so you can hang, motherfucker.
Keep the enemies close.
I went through the goddamn pass, and then you murdered my husband." William Graves had several jobs and was seen as erratic by his nieces. Not erratic, eccentric. Nancy Graves, who was only 9 during that winter, refused to talk about what happened. She never really recovered from having to eat her mother and brother. Eddie remarried and started a family in California. He wanted to make good on his promise to Kessberg, but James Reed and Edward Bryant talked him out of it. Kessberg, this son of a bitch, um, filed a defamation suit against several members of the Salvage Party who had accused him of murdering Tansen. He won, but was only awarded $1 in damages and was forced to pay court cost.
Yeah, all right.
That's what you get, you some bitch. In 1847, a story ran in the California Star describing Kessberg's actions in disturbing detail. It claimed that he preferred to eat human flesh over the horses and cattle that were being exposed with the spring thaw. Which I guess you probably could still eat them if they've been packed under snow all that time, huh?
Yeah.
Just frozen. Maybe a little frostbitten, but or a little freezer burnt. Freezer burnt. Historian Charles McGlashan had gathered enough evidence to indict him for the murder of Tansen, but after his interview with Kessberg, he claimed that no murder had taken place. Eliza Donner, who had become Houghton, also believed Kessberg to be innocent, but that did not change public opinion. Kessberg rarely left his house as he got older because he got so many death threats. As early as 1854, the area where these camps were became a tourist attraction. In the 1880s, McGlashan began to promote a monument for the site. He helped secure the land for the monument, and in June of 1918, a statue of a pioneer family dedicated to the Donner Party was erected in the spot where it is believed the Breen-Kessberg cabin stood.
Hmm.
In 1943, it was made a California Historic Landmark. 7 years earlier, in 1927, 11 acres, or 4.5 hectares, surrounding the monument was made into the Donner Memorial State Park. In 1947, the site of the Murphy Cabin was purchased and added to the park. In 1962, the Immigrant Trail Museum was added to tell the history of migration to California. The next year, the Murphy Cabin and the Donner Monument were established as a National Historic Landmark. A large rock that had been the backstop for the Murphy's fireplace had a bronze plaque attached that listed the members of the party, also indicating which ones survived. As of 2003, the park received an estimated 200,000 visitors a year,
Wow.
which, like, I would also like to be one of those visitors.
Yeah.
And that, folks, is the tale of the Donner Party. There are many books and references to these events, many of them that include interviews from the survivors themselves,
Oh, wow.
which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
So what do you think about the Donner Party, though?
Oh, man, that's horrible.
It's horrible, and I feel like I think in the 90s it was very common to make light of situations and not really talk about how, like, devastating and horrible it was. And everybody just kinda, like, made a joke about the Donner Party, and it was like, no, these people literally, like, they went through hell.
Frozen hell.
So that's what, like, the 7th layer of hell or something is like a frozen like a whole lake of ice?
Yeah.
Like, they were literally in the 7th circle of hell.
Yeah.
Nobody again, nobody wants to eat their fellow human, you know?
Yeah.
But if it's that or die,
You gotta eat.
you're just gonna do what you gotta do,
Yeah.
you know? And they really didn't have any choice. I think they ended up with, like, 15 feet of snow.
That's crazy.
So any food there would have been was way the fuck down there. You can actually find pictures of trees because they had to cut down trees to, build cabins and shit,
Yeah.
and the stumps are, like, 12 feet tall
Yeah.
because they cut it at the snow line.
Sure.
Well, that tells you anything. It's kinda crazy.
At that point, you could fall in too.
Mhm.
So, like, if you weren't wearing snowshoes, then you would just, like, you're
You
gone
really,
into
really would.
the snow somewhere.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, we hope you found these episodes interesting. We hope you guys have a good week, and we will see you guys later.
Be kind to each other.
Love you. Bye.
Get a trail guide.
Yeah, Trail God, a good one, but not Langford Hastings.
Not